Very good evening and welcome to this evening's Cabinet Agenda on Tuesday the 18th of February. Let's run through a little bit of housekeeping before we get underway. So we're not expecting a fire alarm, and should the alarm sound, please exit via the nearest exit and gather in the car park next to the library. Could I please ask that you ensure that all mobile phones and electronic devices are on silent. Please note that we will be using hybrid meeting arrangements with both officers and councillors who are not members of the Cabinet having the option to join the meeting via Zoom. I noticed actually on Zoom this evening we do have a number of members. Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to you. We will also be live streaming this meeting via the Council's YouTube channel to encourage more people to engage in our public meetings. Please can I remind everyone to use their microphones when speaking and of course turn them off when finished. Anyone attending the meeting remotely must use their raise hand function when they wish to speak and to declare any interest at the appropriate time. If anyone attending the meeting remotely loses connection, the meeting will continue and you have the option to follow the meeting via the YouTube live stream. We'll open the meeting with apologies for absence.
Chairman, we have none.
Thank you. Item 2, to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the Cabinet meeting of the 23rd of January this year. Happy to move from the chair.
Happy to second, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Item 3, disclosure of interests. If any member has a pecuniary or a non-pecuniary interest, if you could declare that now, that would be helpful. Thank you. And there are none declared. Urgent items. We have no urgent items this evening, so we will move straight on to the first item for us to discuss, which will be the acquisition of land to deliver Scheme 2 of the Accommodation Repurposing Programme, affectionately known as Hotels to Homes. Councillor Tyerman.
Thank you, Chair. The second scheme for Hotels to Homes project is at a stage where we now need to take a decision that will take us through the first stage. If I can explain the background to this, the council was granted, or has been granted, £2 million of grant funding associated with the devolution deal, the Combined County Authority. That is the allocation that we applied for, to use that £2 million of funding in conjunction with £1 million match funding of our own to support the Hotels to Homes projects. The timetable we were given for this has been extraordinarily difficult. It may be that it's partly to do with delays in getting the devolution deal to conclusion, but essentially we're being asked to put something in motion that started about 4 or 5 months ago with the concept that we would be able to build a new facility all by the end of this coming March, in other words, in about 6 weeks' time. Things just don't happen like that in the real world. But we're now in a position to say that we have identified a piece of land that has a building on it at the moment. We can buy that before the deadline of the end of March. We can set a contract in motion to demolish what's there because there is a planning permission for a completely new build on that site already in existence. As a council, we got 2 choices then. We could either build out the consented scheme or we can modify that consented scheme to get better value, both for ourselves and more units and better value, therefore, for residents and to meeting our housing needs. We are minded to do the latter, though if that proved to be difficult from a point of view of planning, we can always fall back on the former and build out the consented scheme. In order to do this and get this across the line, we have to commit our £1 million of match funding. That, to find the money to do that without without a full business case and being able to put behind it borrowing, we want to use the money that is allocated in the budget that is being proposed later this evening to support that scheme. So if you follow my meaning, any decision we take tonight to progress depends upon the council agreeing the budget, or at least agreeing to leave at least £1 million within the budget to support affordable housing, because that's the amount of match funding we need. The budget papers that we will be considering later and presenting to council in a couple of weeks' time, in fact, will have £1.4 million of money for affordable housing. So we have got a good safety margin for the £1 million that we're needing for here. The plan will be to come back with a second stage of this to Cabinet and, if necessary, to Council, because it may include prudential borrowing, to fund this whole scheme in a different manner to go forward. But for that's looking forward. We can't do that today. So basically, the recommendation I'm putting to Cabinet tonight is that, subject to the Council approving the revenue budget and capital programme on the 27th of February, which includes an allocation of £1 million to affordable housing, the Cabinet approve the inclusion of Scheme 2 within the Hotels to Homes programme and allocate a first stage budget of £1.5 million to fund the acquisition, fees and on costs, demolition and clearance, and redesign of the site, all of which, the £1.5 million, all of which can be funded from the devolution deal grant. We also are taking a decision to delegate authority to the Director of Finance, in consultation with the Director in Pride and Place and Cabinet Member for Housing and Finance, to agree suitable terms to acquire Scheme 2 for a price not exceeding the value stated in exempt appendices 1 and 3, and that's subject to the completion of all necessary due diligence. And as an aside, the price has already been agreed for this, and therefore that's all in place. The third point of the recommendation is to instruct the Head of Strategic Housing and Delivery to appoint a demolition contractor, along with associated technical surveys, reports and required project management, to clear the site and prepare it for new build construction in consultation with the Head of Commercial Services. And as an aside, I will say that we've already received quotes to undertake such work, and therefore are able to proceed with placing those contracts fairly quickly. And the then 3.3 here, to appoint a design and project management team to redesign the site for the optimum form of affordable housing in consultation with the Head of Commercial Services. Then that a second stage cost plan to request the necessary capital uplift to construct a scheme, taking account of grant conditions, scheme viability and planning considerations at that time, be presented to a future meeting of Cabinet. And finally, that the Cabinet notes that due to the delay by central government on the announcement of the next Homes England Affordable Homes programme, the further report requested of officers at the September 2024 Cabinet meeting must be delayed until after the 2025 Comprehensive Spending Review, or at least until such other time as we have suitable confidence of the funding available to support the programme, that being funding from Homes England. So what I'm bringing to you tonight is stage one. It would have been so much nicer to bring a completed project so that we knew exactly where we're going, exactly how it was all costed, but to meet the timescales, we have to do that in two stages. Officers are confident, and I'm confident, having talked to them, that the risk to the council in proceeding without having that final thing is small, particularly because this is mainly funded through grant money, not the council's borrowing, and therefore there is minimal risk.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. Councillor Billings, I understand that you're going to second.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, clearly the Hotels to Homes project is incredibly important. The more homes we deliver on redundant hotel sites, the less we need to use greenfield sites. And that clearly aligns with what our residents very clearly tell us. So recognising the principle of this as a project is extremely appropriate. Why this site? Why should we take forward this particular site? I'd like, Mr. Chairman, to identify 4 key points. The first one, as Councillor Timon identified, it is deliverable within the timescale. It's also a conventional new build following demolition of the existing redundant hotel. That makes it much easier at the outset to accurately quantify the cost of the project, and we know what we're going into. This isn't a complicated conversion where during the build process there'll be lots of unforeseen costs. As a third point, I'd identify that the council, we are, by virtue of the way we go about building, we are inevitably less nimble than a smaller developer. And so where we have build costs that are towards the higher end of the spectrum because of the inevitable way we're structured, it makes most sense to look at sites where the fully development values of those sites, the end units, can support those slightly higher costs. And clearly this is in an area which enables that. And that's important because that then enables, as Councillor Timon's explained on previous occasions, to recycle the money back into further projects by extracting the maximum value out of them. And then the fourth point I would come on to, this was a scheme that came before the Planning Committee. What came before us was 14 units. 14 units seems to be a very common theme, recognising the fact that 15 units starts to trigger affordable housing contributions. Whilst, given I sit on the Planning Committee, I would want to ensure I didn't predetermine any future application that may come forward. One might suppose that there might be the opportunity to reflect on the layout to increase the number of units if, as the council, we're not constrained by the need of the economics of affordable housing as the market is. So for those reasons, I think this is absolutely excellent, not as only a general project, but also this particular scheme. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. Open up for debate or comments within the Cabinet. I would just like to say, recognising that the money coming from the Combined County Authority, this is the first scheme, first tranche of money that we've had from that new authority. Combined County Authority received just over £16 million. So £2 million of that into this housing project is fantastic news for Torbay and, of course, fantastic news for our residents. Hotels to Homes is a scheme that we launched not too long ago, and to be on the second project already is absolutely fantastic news. I know there were some individuals who just thought it was just a nice shiny title and no action would come of it, but to be on the second project already is fantastic news. So absolutely something that I will be supporting this evening. I'm going to look to move outside of the Cabinet. Any questions, any debate outside? Councillor Long.
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. And I hope that Councillor Billings hasn't inadvertently vetted his discretion for planning. I'm sure he hasn't. But I welcome this scheme, however, it is a drop in the ocean compared to what is needed, compared to the need that we have for people who are on the housing waiting list and the people who are in temporary accommodation. Just two questions, if I may. Is it still the administration's plan to sell these homes to another provider further down the line? And if that's the case, what's the plan for that? And secondly, 4.3 of the report quite rightly says that the council plans to increase affordable housing supply. I do wonder why then the council has, I understand, walked away from an agreement with a housing association on a site that the council owns, which would have delivered 50% affordable housing, and at the same time ruining the council's reputation with a partner who would be key to delivering more affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to ask Councillor Tyerman to respond to the first question. The second part of your question isn't actually directly related to this evening's report. However, we do have some very good news to share on that, hopefully at the next Cabinet meeting. But I'll ask Councillor Tyerman to delve a little bit more into the first part of your question.
He would if he could remember what it was.
Are you still planning to sell the...
Oh, thank you. It went in my mind and then suddenly went out again. I think on that particular subject, which is a reoccurring theme, I think we have no preconceived ideas as to whether we hold these buildings long term or whether we sell them. I think I've said many times, I think the current situation in the market would make selling them not a feasible thing to do. I suspect that that will last a number of years. I don't think that we want to get in the way of producing, building, acquiring properties now. I don't think we should let the future of how we handle them and run them get in the way of getting on and building them. I think that's something that will be for a different administration, which may be an existing Torbay council. It may, under local government reorganisation, be a different body to look at and make sensible decisions on. I think I will only just say on the second one that we may have some good news to come. I think it worth saying in terms of any damage to reputation as a result of what happened. I and one of our directors had good conversations with that organisation. I believe that any damage done can be and should be repaired, and we will work to do that going forward. And I still believe that what we did will be shown shortly by good news to have been the right thing to do. So be patient on that.
Thank you, Councillor Tyman. Councillor Billing.
Thank you, Chairman. I think, Councillor Long, the way I see it is what is important is that we are delivering for our residents. And in the form of delivery, that means bringing forwards these hotels to homes projects. What might happen at some future date down the line is a matter for a council at that stage. I think it's important we focus on delivery, and you'll see, Mr Chairman, from the speed at which this project's come forward so soon after the last one, that's what we're focused on. I think it's an important point, but one that I think shouldn't detract from progress at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think it's probably just worth confirming that when Councillor Tyman spoke about any potential sale of these properties would of course be to a registered social landlord, so effectively keeping these properties within the affordable housing band, not looking to move them on out of that area. Councillor Tyman, anything further to wrap up before I move to the vote? Thank you very much indeed. So the proposal has been read out. It is 3.1 all the way through to 3, 4 and 5. So all those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. We move on to item 7, which is rent and service charge policy and proposed changes to social housing rents. Councillor Tyman.
Thank you. Up until recently, the properties that the council owned were owned through Tor Vista, who had a set of policies covering not only the rent and service charges, which is what this policy looks at, but a whole number of other aspects to do with the management of social housing rents. We as a council need, now that we have purchased from Tor Vista and now have direct ownership, rather than ownership through them, of properties for social rent, will need to adopt an equivalent set of policies. This is the first of those. It's been brought forward on its own because the charges need to be increased from April, and we need to give notice by the end of this month in order to make that happen. The other policies will come forward, I believe, in a couple of months' time, and will hopefully all be dealt with at once. So this one is ahead of the others. So that's the background of why we've got this to introduce. What this policy is based on is, broadly speaking, a rewrite of the policies that Tor Vista had. This has been considered by overview and scrutiny, and frankly, I think they raised very few concerns about anything here. In fact, no concerns at all. A few questions, and I think it worth just pointing out one or two things. Social rents, I used to believe, and I think many people still believe, are round about 60% of market rents. That seems to be no longer the case because market rents have gone up so much. It's actually now social rents are more like 50%. Or closer to 50% of market rents. So they are an incredibly beneficial level of rent for people to be paying compared with market. We as a council, I believe, have a policy in place where we increase them in line with government guidelines. It did get raised at overview and scrutiny, I think, as regards affordable rent rather than social, of whether we needed to raise them to that. The reality is, if we want to build, develop or convert new social rent properties, viability is a problem, and we do need to charge the level of rent that we're able to, and which I think, as I've said before, at 50% or near 50% of market rent is very acceptable and fair to the residents who are receiving it. The important thing is to make sure, as the Hotels to Home scheme and others are there, that we get as many people able to get advantage of social rents as possible, and therefore the policy and the increases that are proposed here, I believe, are absolutely right for our residents in Torbay going forward. So I don't want to spend more time than that on talking about this. Basically, it's a policy, and it's also setting a rent for April onwards. So the proposal here is that the rent and service charge policy set out in Appendix 1 to the submitted report be approved, and it's a recommendation to Council that on the 27th of February that Council is recommended to approve as part of the revenue budget, fees and charges, the proposed rent increases for 25-26, whereby all social housing rents are increased by 2.7%. And thirdly, the rent reviews take place on all service occupancy properties, and those rents be increased up to open market value.
Thank you, Councillor. I understand that Councillor Chanter is going to second this one.
Yes, second, agree with everything Councillor Timon said.
Thank you very much indeed. So before I move to questions or comments, this item did go to the Overview and Scrutiny Board. They considered the policy on the 12th of February and supported the proposals and recommendation to Cabinet. So any comments or questions or debates within the Cabinet? Anything outside of the Cabinet? Thank you. In which case, come back to yourself, Councillor Timon, for anything else that you need to sum up with.
I don't need to say anything else. As there have been no questions, there's nothing to answer.
Thank you very much indeed, in which case we will move straight to the vote. Please, all those in favour, indicate that way.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Move on to item 8, which is the Revenue and Capital Budget 25-26 proposals. Going to spend some time really to talk around about where we are. Just as a reminder, this will be coming to Council on the 27th of February. Our approach with the budget has been similar to last year, with that strong grip on finance, making the most of our assets and an evidence-based budget. So you will recall that we went out way before Christmas in November with our original proposals, and they were based on our best assumption on what we thought that the settlement may have been. At that time, we went out with a budget gap of £400,000. Obviously, as we now move forward, we have the figures, we know exactly where we are, so we can present a budget to you this evening with all of the detail in place, delighted to say, which does balance. It is a capital and revenue budget. The capital investment, the way we're looking at capital, is effectively what we have continued to do as we did last year, rather than put in all of the capital projects that are within the council budget, knowing that some would be delivered within the year, but others would take forward 2 or 3 years. We've just included the items that we look to deliver for 25-26. So the capital investment plan of what we look to spend on capital investment for the next year is £32.6 million. So those schemes that we look to bring forward include the Paynton and Preston Promenade scheme at over £17 million, Old Way Mansion Phase 1 restoration work circa £9 million, the Hotels to Homes, the second scheme that we've just spoke about a moment ago, and of course St Kilda's over in Brixham, which is a scheme that is progressing well and demolition is occurring as we speak, plus a continuation of our schools and transport capital programmes. Probably if I jump straight to the question that's on everybody's mind about, well, when we get into the detail, what does this actually relate to in financial terms? In other words, what is it going to cost me? Well, we do have a commitment to passport 2% increase through to our integrated care organisation for adult social care. Therefore, we will be proposing that 2% adult social care precept. Then the government give us up to 2.99% that we are allowed to increase the council tax by before, one, we either need to go to referendum, or two, we need to have a conversation with government. So we have started from a zero-based approach, worked our way up, and we have got to 2.75 there. So our total council tax increase will be 4.75%, and that is 0.25% below the maximum amount that we could have charged. I say the maximum amount we could have charged, and that is under normal circumstances. However, if you look around the country, you don't have to look too far. Somerset, Birmingham, if you go out to, as far as Bradford, you'll find increases this year of 9.9%. So we were conscious of the fact that we absolutely wanted to take into effect people's ability to pay, but we will be looking to go out, and the proposal that we take to council in a couple of weeks' time will be 4.75%. The survey results back from our consultation were very positive, generally. A few not surprising less support for, let's say, certainly less support for any increase at all in the level of council tax, any increase in the level of fees and charges, and also not much support for increasing the number of planning enforcement officers, which, to be honest, came to me as a personal surprise when I see the amount of residents' complaints regarding planning enforcement issues, and therefore, but that was the view of the consultation. Look, I am conscious that I could talk on this for a very, very long period of time. I want to get on to probably some of the big changes within the budget, and then I'll probably leave some of the better bits and the further one-off investments for Councillor Timon when he seconds, so I don't steal all of his thunder. But as you will recall, in November when we went out, we had that £400,000 gap. We have now closed that gap. We have now closed that gap. We've also been able to address some of the legacy issues within the council's budgets to bring those into line. We've put an additional allocation for adult social care of a further £1.7 million into that. We have the money come in from, or some of the money coming in from government for national insurance contributions, which effectively comes in and more or less goes out as a straight line in, straight line out, £1.2 million. There is something new called the extended producer responsibility, which is a new pot of money for Torbay. It currently represents £2.3 million. At the moment, we do not know if that is a one-off, or it certainly is designed to be continuing on for a number of years. However, we don't know at what level that will be. So we're splitting that money out into help with national insurance contributions within Swissco, but also to provide 6 new vehicles for Swissco, which will be purpose-built, small, I can't call them refuge vehicles, I can't call them recycling vehicles. They will be multi-purpose. They're effectively split into half, so that at one half you can do recycling, at the other half you can do regular waste at the same time. So it means that in some of those hard to reach areas that we have across the bay, we can send a smaller vehicle there. It can do recycling and waste collection all in one hit on the same day, particularly in some of our flats where they don't have the opportunity to recycle to the same extent as other places do. So investment going into there. We will I was just going to talk about affordable housing. I'll leave that for you, Councillor Diamond. I think what I'm going to do is I'll hold fire there because I'll get an opportunity to come back rather than steal all your thunder, Councillor. The proposal obviously is that this will go forward to Council on the 27th of this month when the Council will hopefully approve the budget as it is presented. Councillor Tyman, I understand that you're happy to second.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm happy to second it. I don't mind you stealing thunder. I've already presented two things, but there you go. I would like to say a few words about the budget. The first thing is that I think this is probably the 10th budget, council budget I've seen presented. I think it's only the third I've had a leading part in putting together, but it's the 10th I've seen. But I've never seen one before now that's had such a substantial change between the draft budget and the final submission. This budget benefits from substantial increase in grant funding, and that has produced, I believe, some real benefits for the council and for residents in Torbay. At the same time, however, I've not seen a budget which has had such significant extra costs between the draft budget and the final thing, and the prime reason behind that is the very significant increase in national insurance contributions that came through the budget. These have impacted on the council, and although those are being covered by some of the extra grant given to us for that very reason, that has not covered increases that are being incurred through Swissco. It's certainly not going to certainly not going to cover increases that many of our suppliers and partners are incurring. As such, we have made significant allowance within this final budget to safeguard the council against the fullest fallout of those national insurance increases. And as such, I hope and believe we've created a robust and sustainable budget for 2025 and a firm base to go beyond that. So coming now, I think, on to a couple of more encouraging bits. One of the things that we have been able to do in this budget is place, as I mentioned earlier, 1.4 million allocation to affordable housing. As Cabinet Member for Affordable Housing, I'm delighted to see that and to be able to have that available to, I think, start making some real differences in Torbay. For the time being, 1.2 million of that is being treated as a one-off allocation this year. 200,000 has been put into the base. And the reason it's split that way, I think, is because of the nervousness in some ways already expressed as to how much of the budget increase, the extra grants we're getting, will flow on into future years. Whilst 1.4 million would not buy or help us develop many properties on its own, it will, when used alongside Homes England grant and supported borrowing, be a significant contributor to overcoming viability issues which all councils, and certainly we in Torbay, are facing. There is also hope that the forthcoming new Homes England programme will increase considerably the levels given to affordable housing, and this, if it happens, will help ensure that our 1.4 million budget will achieve so much more. In the short term, as mentioned in the Scheme 2 some half hour ago, we are allocating 1 million of this to provide a match funding, an underwriting of match funding for that scheme. The hope is that we can put together a scheme that will support borrowing, will attract in Homes England and will release a large part, if not all, of the 1 million back to support other schemes. If we can get added value from the way we use this money, that's certainly my ambition, to get that value, to create as much as we can using it, and I will work hard to make sure that happens. Finally, I'd like to say that we're delighted to have been able to put forward a community grant fund within this budget proposals. £200,000 we're putting forward to work alongside community groups, alongside ward councillors and residents to fund or part fund projects suggested by the community. These to be in the most deprived wards in Torbay. The criteria for this fund are yet to be determined, but are likely to favour schemes that have lasting benefits to the communities, and also may favour schemes where the fund will help generate additional funds or in-kind community input. However, nothing is ruled out at this stage, and we will look forward to having suggestions from all councillors, from the voluntary sector and community groups as to what the criteria should be. So let's have input to help us formulate the criteria so that the community gets the maximum benefit from the scheme that is put together. I think this is an exciting development to have this available to us. I really look forward to seeing some real benefit in some of our deprived wards. And as such, I'm absolutely determined to keep a close eye, make sure that we get the maximum we can out of that fund. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor, in which case we shall now move to any debate or questions within the Cabinet. Thank you, Councillor Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm particularly pleased that we've been able to respond positively to priority and resources overview and scrutiny suggestion that money be put into the play parks. So there is £500,000 going into our play parks. As lead member of Children's Services, I'm really very pleased to be able to celebrate that and hope it will get support when it goes to full council. But also, I think there are other items for Children's Services that are worth noting. So we have money to go in, 150,000 one-off for a Paynton-based property to deliver an additional Children's Services Assessment Resource Centre, £160,000 to be invested in Unit 1 of Tor Hill House to prepare and house the Youth Justice Service as a place for young people to come in and receive the support and help that they need. That's absolutely a priority in our Youth Justice Service Improvement Plan. And then we have 150,000 as council match funding to bid for government grant funding to acquire or adapt a suitable asset to support children's social care residential placements. And we've got £50,000 going into the base budget created for child-friendly activity. And in fact, an officer has been appointed to put that through so that we get, we work towards being a UNICEF recognised child-friendly place. So in contrast with lots of other councils that are having to make staff redundant, that have had to ask the government for much higher council tax increases, I think some authorities are going up to 9%, 9.9. We're actually going for a lower settlement than the government cap. Although it isn't a cap this year, they're allowing other councils to go higher. So only good news for council taxpayers in the Bay, that council tax bills will stay lower than in neighbouring authorities. We don't have to go to the higher increases that others have to go to, and that we are able to spend money. And I'm particularly pleased that colleagues have recognised various projects that are worth supporting in children's services. I want to say thank you to you, to Councillor Timon, who does a very good job, and to professional colleagues for putting together what I think is a really good budget for Torbay.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments within the Cabinet? Let's move outside of the Cabinet. Any comments? Councillor Long?
I may have missed the announcement at the beginning, Mr. Chairman, but I'd just like to join in the welcome of the new Cabinet member that we have here this evening, sat next to Councillor Tranter, and it's good to see him here. I'm going to save most of what I'm going to say for full council, so I'll be briefer than everyone else so far this evening. As Councillor Tyman has pointed out, the council has had a very good settlement from the government. Thanks to this and the financial management of the last administration, the council is in a very good financial position. And of course, our financial management was partly why we won the Council of the Year award in 2023. I'm disappointed that despite this good financial position, that the worst off, i.e. those on council tax support, won't be getting any further relief via a more generous council tax support scheme. That would have been a very good thing to do. Also, given the number of inquiries I get about the need for bus services in certain areas, such as the Watcombe ward, it would have been good to see a more generous bus subsidy scheme. I also joined Councillor By in supporting the acceptance of suggestions by Lib Dem and independent councillors via overview and scrutiny for more money for play parks, affordable housing and sport. And I'm pleased to see that Councillor By is taking forward the excellent work done by Councillor Law on the child-friendly Torbay. So that's good. But I'll leave it there for now and look forward to a much longer contribution at full council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We welcome your support. Councillor Cowell.
Yeah, and like Councillor Long, I welcome the acceptance and recognition of the recommendations that we put forward through O&S to kickstart the works that are necessary in our play parks. We have to start somewhere, and that 500k potentially could grow with match funding and other innovative approaches that we can take. Disappointed that in the capital projects, again, there's no sport facility improvements projects. Our facilities across the bay, as we know, are really inadequate, and it's time that we started focusing on how we can improve the capital, all very well supporting the revenue side of it, which of course I applaud, because we started it a few years ago, but we need to start thinking about the facilities. I'm not quite sure how the 48% of households that are going to benefit by 7p a week will be rushing to spend that money each week. That is the element, the 0.25% saving on council tax. Whilst it's a nice headline, it doesn't actually dent the sides of the kind of challenges many of our residents are facing. Just to pick up on one clarification from you, Chair, you stated that the final details are in. It's my understanding that the public health element of the grant, which again, like Councillor Long, recognised the significant improvements in grant funding from this government, was only announced very recently, and as of yesterday, we still didn't know how that additional net sum, I think, of £300,000 would be allocated. When will that detail be presented? I don't know whether Councillor Trant may have been involved in some of those discussions at this stage or not, but maybe you have been. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. So, a couple of questions. I'll come to Lincoln in just a moment regarding the public health, but I'm going to go over to Councillor Billings first to pick up on the buses.
Thank you, Chairman. Picking up on the buses, what a fantastic way to pass it across. So as Councillor Long identified, we've been really successful in this administration, being able to put record levels of subsidy into providing a fantastic bus service. When I started as responsibility for this portfolio, this council put £150,000 a year in. We now put in 220, so that's slightly just under 50% increase, which is a fantastic result, and that's allowing us to deliver more services. Councillor Long and other members will also recall that government announced a settlement which effectively was a one-off 2.2 million injection into buses. We've used that in the transport team to come up with some improvements which are not financed out of the base budget, and very shortly I'll be meeting with group leaders, and if they find that helpful, there are also wider groups to talk members through the suggested uses of those funds to deliver the service improvements. So it's not a case that in any way, Councillor, we're not prioritising this, far from it. We're just using money wisely, and this particular one-off money the government gave us this year to maximum effect to get the greatest benefit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. And as I indicated, Councillor Cowell, as I indicated in my own proposal, one thing that we have seen from government this year is almost a drip-drip effect with things coming out, well, as and when. One very late allocation was the public health allocation, which did come out last week. You will see in the budget that we've already got a £75,000, which is a request from, my apologies, from Overview and Scrutiny, going into sport, going into the base 75,000, which actually comes from public health. Lincoln was engaged in business last week when it came through. We are expecting to have all of the detail by the end of this week, and of course we'll be able to share that. But as I say, we already did spend some of his money before we even knew he was getting any more. Lincoln, anything else that you wish to add?
Yes, just to say that we've been doing some work on the recurrent element. One of the challenges we've had in the public health grant is that we have been very careful about recurrent commitments so that we don't end up with cliff edges. And as such, we have been, in a sense, in an austerity budget for quite some time. What this allows us to do is that there are some of our contracts where we know, and in terms of some of the cost pressures for Agenda for Change, the national insurance and stuff, a good chunk of that pressure is now, will now be picked up. There are some other areas that we have been talking about through the annual reports on healthy aging, for example, and others. So we have put together a plan which I'm taking through to Councillor Tranter and yourself on Thursday to test the proposals that we've put in place. And again, that will be ready for full council. We'll have those details by then.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, have I missed anybody who wanted to speak? I don't think so. So I'm just going to wrap up actually with a couple of things. And so what I think is important is recognising the increases by directorate. So this is the amount of money extra that we're putting in, that we've been able to put into the budget this year. So adults and community services, an additional £4.5 million. Children's services, an additional 2.5 million. And Pride in Place, an additional 3.7 million. And it is by not having that scattergun approach, we launched two what we referred as operations, Operation Brighter Bay and Operation Town Centre last year. They are the council's flagship projects that we are absolutely committed to. These have come along from basically residents asking and effectively demanding that we look after the place, and therefore we have this year we'll see £600,000 of new money going into Operation Brighter Bay, and Operation Town Centres, dealing with our antisocial behaviour, a further 300,000 this year, taking that also to £600,000. So as I finish and we move to the vote, it's probably just worth reminding that this year, with Torbay's Council's budget, we are in a fairly good financial position. We have no cuts to services. We are continuing on the longer term strategic approach. It's on the back of strong financial management, concentrating on the things that matter to our residents. And finally, summing up, investing in our services which make a difference. And at that point, I shall move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. We move on to item 9, where we have been just looking forward. We're going to be looking backwards now with the budget monitoring 24-25, April to December 24 revenue and capital outturn forecast. Councillor Tyerman.
Thank you. And I think it's, in some ways, it might have been that this should have come before the budget. It feels that we're looking forward and then looking back, as Councillor Thomas has indicated. But the good performance that we are looking at in our Q3 is also a fundamental element of how we were able to build budgets going forward, with a lot of knowledge and security that we're coming off a very firm, secure base. It's certainly to be looking at the end of Q3 at a position that, to all intensive purposes, is pretty well break even. £11,000 deficit, which is what we're showing in the size of our budget, is almost insignificant. And my colleagues, my financial team, tell me that they're very confident that we will end up the year with some sort of surplus, and probably a reasonably comfortable one. So that's an exceedingly good position. There are, of course, some pluses and some minuses in performance going on. They were studied by Overview and Scrutiny when they looked at this a couple of weeks ago. They've been, questions have been asked internally by officer groups to identify what's going on, and some of the overspends that have been occurring in some parts of the council have been reflected in changes in next year's budgets to rebase the budgets. So I'm very hopeful that some of the areas that we are still seeing overspend will not show overspend of anything like the same extent when we come to look at figures next year. But there are no changes, so basically, or there's nothing to be changed. Basically, Cabinet notes this evening the forecast revenue outturn position and amendments, but it does have to approve some revisions to the capital investment plan as per Appendix 1. Those are listed as in the appendix. Basically, a lot of them are based upon grant expenditure, and very little of those will be a new or surprise to anybody, because they've been discussed, debated and publicised before now. They are just being brought together in this report and assimilated into the council's capital budget, and indeed that is the budget that has been taken forward to create next year's budget. So, coming back again to the proposals, we note the revenue position and we approve the revisions to the capital investment plan as per the appendix, or we recommend that council makes that approval in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you very much indeed. Do you have a seconder?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Very happy to second, and I think Councillor Tyman has gone over the main points. I think we had a very good debate at overview and scrutiny where a number of subjects came up and we had the input of officers and others going forward. So I don't think I have any more to add. Thank you.
Thank you. And indeed, the Overview and Scrutiny Board considered this policy on the 12th of February and supported the proposals and recommendation to Cabinet. Therefore, do we have any comments from outside of the Cabinet? Thank you. Anything further from the Cabinet? In which case, I will move straight to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. We move now on to item 10, and that is the Torbay Council Climate Change Action Plan. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is the Torbay Council Climate Change Action Plan 24-26, which went through overview and scrutiny the other day, where the recommendation was approval for it. But first of all, I'd like to thank the team of David Edmondson, Jackie Warren, who are with us today, and their team for all the hard work that they've done putting this together. Not only in this, but also doing their day job, which is not the easiest at times to find savings in carbon emissions and at the same time trying to save the council money. So well done to them. The plan also continues the actions to tackle climate change across council operations and services. Last year, Mr. Chairman, you may remember we had the Torbay Climate Partnership develop the Greener Way for our bay, which covered the whole of the bay. What we're talking about today is the action plan for Torbay Council and our actions to try and get down to net zero by 2030. As you will see from the document, it is in two phases. Phase 1 is our priority actions over the next 2 years. The report mentions and has highlights. I'm sure everyone in the Cabinet has read that, and hopefully others have read it. But I'll mention a few of the highlights that are in the report. One is the street lighting control management and LED lighting. We want to try and bring that forward. People are probably not surprised that 90% of our carbon emissions in the council are taken up with Swissco and their transport and other transport and the light and heating in the council. So it is important that we look at putting in the LED lighting. We need to also look at all council buildings to see if we can put solar panels on the roofs of those buildings. So that is also taking place at the moment. And of course, the decarbonation of Brixham Harbour Estate, looking at the Harbour Estate to see where we can possibly find carbon reduction in carbon emissions. And procurement, when we do procurement and working with our partners to see ways in which we can get best value for money, but also best value for money as far as carbon emissions are concerned. Phase 2 takes us to the travel, which is a very important one, and one that is going to take longer than we thought to come up with. But it is important that we look at our fleets, not only in Swissco, but also children's services and other staff who use vehicles. It's one that we have to make sure that we get right. If you get it wrong, it could suffer the service going forward of that directorate. So it's important that we take our time to make sure that we get it right. And of course, all actions will require a full business plan. We want to save carbon emissions, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we get value for money. So a full business plan will come out on these items. And the action plan will be a vital part of delivering the ongoing commitment to tackle the climate emergency and to get the council state, if you like, to net zero by 2030. So I ask for your support. The recommendation is outlined in the report 4.2. The Cabinet approves the Torbay Council Climate Change Action Plan 2024-26 as set out in Appendix 1 to the submitted report. I ask for the support of the Cabinet. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. I understand that Councillor Billings will second.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's entirely right. Councillor Lewis has done an extremely good job of presenting this. So I only want to touch very briefly on two key points as I see them. The first is the justification for this. There are those in our community who very strongly value environmental protection and carbon savings, and there are those who maybe attach a lower priority to those. But all of us recognise the importance of the Council taking the opportunity to save money where it can, so that those savings can be ploughed back into providing better service for our residents and reducing council taxes. And that's what's at the heart of a lot of these proposals. Councillor Lewis, he touched on street lighting. What the proposals effectively are is a very sophisticated control system for our street lighting, combined with upgrading the lamp type from very energy inefficient ones to much more sophisticated LED bulbs, so that the council not only reduces its carbon emissions, but also, more importantly, saves a great deal of money that's currently being wasted at the moment. Again, in relation to the solar panels being installed on buildings, people will have seen routinely householders installing solar panels on roofs of buildings. Why? Because they make great financial sense in a multitude of different applications, and that's what we're talking about here. So this isn't just from a principle perspective. This is, as we said in the budget, Mr. Chairman, using your money wisely and making sensible, prudent financial decisions for our residents. Equally, where we are looking into wider things, reflecting the central government context, which is to do more, and if you don't, ultimately councils won't get the funding come through that you talked about earlier, Mr. Chairman. We're doing that wisely. Previously, the council funded electric quad bikes within Swissco, only to realise that when the electric spray kit was added to them, we had service delivery problems, and we've had to replace those with petrol quad bikes. And I think what's important is going forward, we look at this in an intelligent way to ensure that the steps that we as a council make actually think about the resultant service delivery for our residents, and that's what we have here in this proposal, and I'm really pleased to support it. I think it's justified on basic economic grounds, as well as being the right thing to do in the context of what central government requires us to do, and making the appropriate steps towards carbon delivery savings. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I open up for debate, the Overview and Scrutiny considered this action plan on the 12th of February. They supported the proposals and recommendation to the Cabinet. However, they also recommended to the Cabinet to request Swissco to raise awareness of recycling in public bins to reduce the risk of contamination of the recycled waste and enable it to be processed effectively. Clearly, that links into, I guess, the wider climate change action, and therefore a separate report will be presented on that item to Cabinet at the next Cabinet meeting. So just a nod to Overview and Scrutiny. Thanks very much indeed. It hasn't been forgotten. It's not included within this report, but it will be the issue of a separate report coming at the next Cabinet meeting. So at which point I shall open up for any comments or debate. Councillor Long.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And this is the second item where there have been overview and scrutiny recommendations. Sorry, there are people looking at me. Very, very odd. My button is on. This is the second item where there have been overview and scrutiny recommendations, but I'm slightly disappointed that the overview and scrutiny coordinator isn't here to present those, but never mind. When this item was discussed at overview and scrutiny, there was a discussion about the fact that there are some council projects, for example, the Nightingale Park solar farm, that are not in this report, but they are in another report which has been through Cabinet, which I understand is a community report, and it's called something like Greener Way for the Bay. But no reference to that report seems to be mentioned so far this evening. And so I guess there's a bit of sort of confusion in my mind. If there are two separate environmental reports, which one is going to be prioritised, or are they going to be prioritised by offices together? If there's going to be scrutiny of things, environmental things, but they're in different reports, are they both reports going to be scrutinised at the same time? What is the sort of coordination that's going to be on those two reports, on those two documents rather? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything else from anywhere else? Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just regarding the recycling. I'm also on the scrutiny board, so I welcome that there's going to be an additional report. It was first in 2019 at a council meeting that I first raised about dual bins, recycling, to try and encourage members of the public that when they do throw away the litter, if there is separate bins, that they do use it. And I think it would be a good step forward, certainly for Torbay, certainly for our recycling rates, if this could be widened. So I welcome that section of the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. So let's just pick up a couple of these before I pass back to Councillor Lewis. So as I said, the issue that was raised by overview and scrutiny, it will be coming back as a separate standalone issue to the Cabinet next month, and that will give the coordinator an opportunity to talk about that particular item. Obviously, it wasn't down to be discussed or debated this evening as part of the climate change action plan, but it hasn't been forgotten, and it will be coming back next month. I will hand over to Councillor Lewis to conclude.
Thank you very much. I'm amazed that Councillor Long didn't hear me mention it. I shall read out the short paragraph again. I think I did it word for word. I'll do it word for word again. Last year, the Torbay Climate Partnership developed the Greener Way for Our Bay action plan. This plan covers actions for this council that covered for the whole of the Bay. And that, as you will remember, Councillor Long, because I'm sure you sat on that board, Greener Way for the Bay went to overview and scrutiny, who scrutinised that. It then went to the leadership board, who gave their recommendation, because we felt, because it covered the whole of the Bay and it was a community plan, that it should go to the leadership board. It went to the leadership board that endorsed it. So you have one complete document that went out for full consultation for many weeks and went around the Bay to different locations getting feedback. That is the one for the whole of the Bay. The one tonight, the action plan, is for Torbay Council estate. And that is the difference. So clearly, the community partnership, climate board, is part of the community, which I sit on, and we review that all the time. And what I said earlier about our officers are working across the board for the whole of Torbay and trying to find grants, if they can find grants for the good people of Torbay. This is purely for Torbay Council, where we know we can deliver, subject to a business plan. So I hope that helps, Councillor Long. And I apologise if you weren't at that overview and scrutiny, but I'm sure that if you want more details, I'll happy to provide it outside this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. That's all of the queries responded to, in which case, shall we move to the vote? All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Move on to item 11, which is land disposal at Penn, Meadow in Brixham. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It seems to have been the sort of Alan Tarman had 3 on the trot. I've got 3 on the trot. Councillor Timon said maybe we can mix them up next time so that we are getting a bit old in age, aren't we, Councillor Timon, and lose our voice when we talk too much. But anyway, we'll do our best on this one. And this is an important report because it is helping our good friends in Brixham, the town council. And it covers, as you quite rightly say, the land disposal at Penn Meadow in Brixham. Brixham Town Council approached us and asked if this plot of land, whether we would transfer it over to Brixham Council. And the reason for their request is to join up with the wishing field. And as you will see from the report with the maps, it makes absolute sense that that part of land is then in with wishing field. And not only that, the community have done a lot of work on Penn Meadow to try and keep it, I was going to say wind and watertight. I have the pavilion on my mind at all times, as you know, Mr. Chairman. It's not wind and watertight. Keep the weeds down and maintain that bit of land. So we agreed to sell the land for an enormous sum. Again, talking about 54 million to do up Old Way mansions. This is only £1. So we are in agreement to sell that plot of land to Brixham Council for £1. We have put a covenant in because it is a bit of land where you could build houses. So if they do build houses, it would be quite wrong not to get some money back in addition to the pound. So we have put a covenant in there and a clawback condition if it is ever built on. So the recommendation in the report is that the Director of Finance be authorised to dispose of the freehold interests of land known as the land at Penn Meadow, Brixham, to Brixham Town Council for a nominal sum of £1 and subject to a restrictive covenant and clawback conditions in relation to the land continue as public open space with legal costs associated with the transfer being met by Brixham Town Council. So I think it's a good news story. As you know, always working with our neighbours and always good if we can help out Brixham Town Council. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm delighted to second this from the chair. 2 years ago, where just before I became a leader, I was talking to Brixham Town Council, and they were talking very much about a lack of a relationship between Brixham Town Council and Torbay Council. And upon becoming leader, I said that we would have bi-monthly meetings, and they have continued. That's a real opportunity for us to work together, for us to talk about issues that are coming down the line, provide solutions for each other, and that's been great. So this Wishingsfield obviously was the subject of a village green status some little while ago, and this is, as Councillor Lewis explained, a piece of land that actually links in to this Wishingsfield. It was a request from Brixham Town Council to bring it forward. So as I say, more than happy to second this evening. And of course, at the same time, just to remind members of the £750,000 investment that we are putting in to Brixham Public Realm. We have spoken to the Town Council, again, building on the back of that relationship and finding out exactly what they and where they wanted that money being spent. So delighted to say that this comes from the Levelling Up Partnership, and that work in Brixham will be starting very, very soon, including bringing forward a whole new lot of festoon lighting as well as part and parcel of the refurbishment. So good news all round. I apologise, Councillor, for drifting off the subject, but it is a good news story. Okay, so I will stop there and invite any comments from around the table, either inside the cabinet or outside. At which point I shall move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Item 12, Local Development Scheme. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and this hopefully will be supportive and quite short to go through. I'm sure you've all read the documentation. It is the Local Development Scheme, Local Plan Timetable, and as part of the government drive to boost house building and expedient local plans, they've asked for timetables to be presented to them by the 6th of March. As you know, they are looking at 940 homes a year for Torbay, and through the local working party, who've been working hard to be able to do that and will continue to do so. It's going to be challenging, but the main purpose of this report is to make sure that we have a timetable that can go to the government by the 7th. If you look at the document, I'll just go through very briefly, which is on page, for those who have got the document, 226. So between now and the summer, we will be looking at putting the draft local plan together, which will include not only trying to find the 940 spots, but also the core tourism investment areas, affordable housing, climate change, and all that will go into that local plan. It's not just about finding sites for development, it's also covering other subjects. We hope that we will have agreement through the working party by cross-party, I hope, by September 2025, and then that will go out for public consultation in October 25. So the regulation 18, where you have full consultation on that. And once we get that information back, we then, in the spring of 26, agreement for the preferred option, which is then regulation 19, and that will go to council for approval. And then autumn 26, it will be submitted for inspection and hopefully approval. And that will be in December 26. And then by 27, examination, modification if needed, and adoption of the local plan. That is our timescale at the moment, Mr. Chairman. Clearly things change. We have got local government reorganisation going on at the moment. Whether that will affect it, at the moment the government is saying, get on with your local plan. Clearly, it's always your back of your mind that you have got the reorganisation, but the government have stated that we have to get on with the local plan, and that's what we're doing. And again, I'd like to thank the team. David Pickhaven can't be here tonight, but David Edmondson is here, Divisional Director, and it is a major issue going forward. The working party is working hard, cross-party, to find a solution in reference to those dates going forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you indeed. Councillor Billings.
Thank you, Chairman. As Councillor Lewis has very well explained, this is not about the content of the new local plan. This is about the process for drawing up the new local plan. And it's incredibly important that we do draw up the new local plan, given the change that has been brought about by the new central government. We've gone from having an advisory starting point for the amount of housing we should have in our area to a mandatory target. A mandatory target of 940 new homes a year, which if our area delivers that, we would see the entirety of Torbay built on over the next 14 years. Now that's the context to why this is so important. That cross-party working that Councillor Lewis talked about, getting all members to pull in the same direction, putting our residents first in the context of that, really, really important. I do hope that there are some solutions we can come up with, but this at the moment, at this stage, this is about process, not content, and what we've got here is a very sensible timetable to work through so we can get that cross-party working and come up with an excellent new local plan that takes our area forward and avoids some of the pitfalls that I've just set out that could otherwise be there for us. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you indeed, Councillor Billings. Let's open to any questions, comments, debates. Councillor Cowell.
Thank you, Chair. And of course, I always welcome cross-party engagement on such critical issues such as this. I think it's a little bit scaremongering in terms of the emphasis that's just been put on mandatory targets, because the mandatory targets existed until the previous government backtracked on those because of fears from their backbenchers. Fears that actually still cost them their seats, of course. But the terms of the timetable, we are in the process now of having these private and confidential cabinet local plan working party meetings, which are represented by all groups of the council. I have made the point on more than one occasion that there is a significant body of people who have worked tirelessly in a voluntary capacity for many years, in actual fact, particularly in the Torquay Neighbourhood Forum, that are on the sidelines of this, that are excluded from this currently. When will the community be actually engaged with the emerging proposals? Because at the moment, there is no indication within the timetable when that will happen, other than the generic consultations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We'll pick that one up in just a moment. Anything else from anybody else? Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The local plan working party, at the moment, it is for members to go through the maps and everything else. I'm not going to go through it in details. You've put a question down, or someone's put a question down for the full council meeting next week, where I will answer that in more detail. I think at the moment, and it's not scare tactics, the government have said that you need to build 940 homes. And there's no wriggle room over it, or very little wriggle room. It's not scaremongering, it's fact that that's what they've done. And that's what we've got to try and work towards, as you well know, Councillor Cowell, because you sit on the working party. But the recommendation going forward, I'll just read it out so that those who haven't got the paperwork in front of them, the recommendation is, number one, that the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government be informed of the timetable from the local plan preparation as set out in the submitted report by the 6th of March 2025. Number two, that the local plan preparation timetable be kept under review and updated as necessary, and the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency be authorised to make amendments to the local development scheme in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Place Development and Economic Growth. That's the recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. And with that recommendation confirmed, all those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. We move on to item 13, which is the Adult Social Care Electronic Recording System Replacement. Councillor Tranter.
Thank you, Chair. So this is regarding the replacement of Paris, or the dreaded Paris, as people call it, that have to work with it on a daily basis. So the contract is coming to Cabinet because of the cost of procurement. Paris is our current tech system. It's where we store NHS patient records. It is outdated, it's difficult to navigate, and as I said, staff do not like it. And I believe that we are one of the last, if not the last, local authority to be using this system. The contract will be awarded to Liquid Logic, and procurement of the second contract to a delivery partner for technical support. We have listened to the advice and experience of our children's services colleagues who are already using Liquid Logic and have ensured the technical support is sufficient. This is going to be a really complex process, which involves the NHS taking back data ownership into the council. So it's a good move, and I'm hoping you all support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. Councillor Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And obviously, as this is to do with IT and procurement, you picked on me to second it, as I have unequal knowledge on such matters, I'm sure, around this cabinet. And that was meant to be funny. I'm going to read out the recommendation so that people know exactly what it is that we're voting on. So that the contract for an integrated social care and finance IT system be awarded to System C, Liquid Logic, and commencing in March 2025, subject to contract agreement for a 5-year period, be approved, and 3.2, that a direct award is made to Channel 3 Consultancy to be extended for a 1-year period as our strategic partner, be approved, that a procurement exercise, provision of technical support resources be approved, and any subsequent contract to be awarded in line with the officer's scheme of delegation, paragraph 1.3. I am genuinely pleased to support this. It is an excellent report that makes quite a complicated subject relatively simple, and I did actually manage to understand it. And the thing that I would like to stress is this will make adults' system compatible with children's system. Councillor Trant has already eloquently explained that children's are very happy with the Liquid Logic and moved on many years ago, I think we did have Paris many years ago. So we're very pleased, and it will be helpful particularly for transition from children to adults, so that we have a joined up system. So there we go. I tried not to be funny to begin with, and then I've become serious, and I think for once I've been more sensible and serious. So please support this.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Bye. Any questions from outside the Cabinet? Councillor Long?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I would indeed like to welcome this, and I'm surprised that Councillor Bye hadn't picked up the excellent news that this system brings for equality and diversity in Torbay. As colleagues will know, I often look to the equality impact table in the report, and on this occasion it says a new IT system will support, identify and provide services that address equality and diversity, ensuring all members of the public are assessed and treated equally. I have been plaguing Joe Williams about this ever since I was elected in 2017, about the need for a data system that will capture data on our various communities in Torbay. And finally, I can't believe it's going to be in 2025, but in 2025 we will have a system that can do that, because councils and other public services will not provide services to communities that they're not aware that they have in their area, but now they will be able to capture the various different communities, and this can only be good news. So it will wholeheartedly have my support, and I'll have to buy Joe Williams a particularly good retirement present as a result. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cowell?
Sorry.
Councillor Cowell, thank you.
I think I was fighting with Lisa to unmute me. Yeah, likewise, clearly welcome this development, but obviously with my sort of financial hat that I tend to wear, we're always aware with major IT projects, the risks that are associated with delays and overruns and impacts on costs. I believe, if I recall correctly, when it was introduced in Children's Services, there was experience of those issues. Hopefully we've got a lot of learning from that process, as I think has been indicated. But what assurances are there in terms of the implementation programme and any potential increase in costs? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from anyone else? Okay, I'll hand back to Councillor Tranter in just a moment. I think it's great news that we are putting liquid logic into adults. As we've already said, it links into children. And actually, I think what is really important is we've got a system that our users in children's knows how it works, which is a fundamental, massive help, because when it transports across to adults and they're learning it for the first time, actually, at the end of a telephone is our whole team in children, and that makes a massive difference. I think what's great also is liquid logic is used wider across Devon as well, which also, you know, with local government reorganisation coming down the line, if we're all using a similar software package, it makes integration of whatever format that look like so much easier. But let me pass back to Councillor Tranter. I hope I haven't stolen all of your thunder.
Never. Councillor Long, absolutely agree. Having worked with the Paris system, there just isn't the facility to capture that data. So this is going to be a really good way of, like you say, capturing the data that we can't previously, unless you scroll, you know exactly where somebody wrote some notes 5 years ago, possibly. It's a very difficult system to navigate, and this new system is going to take all of that away. Again, Councillor By, absolutely, we all know the massive issues we have with transition services, and this is going to just help enormously with that. With regards to cost, the fact that we know this system so well, we've done our research, there won't be any extra cost. It's all going to go swimmingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So we move to the vote then. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. We're on the penultimate page. That doesn't mean the penultimate item, but it means we're getting towards the end. Item 14, Torbay Interagency Carers Strategy Action Plan 24 to 27. Thank you, Councillor Tranter.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the recommendations for reference is that Torbay Interagency Carers Strategy Action Plan 23-27 be endorsed and improved, that the overall strategy KPIs updated for Q3 be noted, and that the Council's specific actions be approved. So the Carers Strategy came to Council last year, and this is the Interagency Action Plan. Specific reference is made to Torbay Council's own actions, which are already well underway. For example, the My Bay card, which is free for carers and has been very warmly welcomed by carer services and all of our unpaid carers within Torbay. Thank you.
Thank you indeed. Second, Councillor By.
Very pleased indeed to second this. And as I understand it, these key performance indicators were in response to requests made by overview and scrutiny. So we had the strategy, these are the performance indicators, and as Councillor Tranter has said, we're already making very good progress in the implementation of the strategy as reflected in very positive story with the key performance indicators. So we're doing our very, very best indeed for carers in the Bay. Thank you so much. And there's a wonderful, the Carers Day at the library and the Information Centre in Painting just before Christmas. And it was extremely well attended and highly valued. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, any comments, any debate? Councillor Long.
Thank you. And the tech team behind the wall behind you have moved the mic forward towards me because apparently I'm too quiet. Who knew? There was a section in the report on support for older people, and one thing that's come to my attention the last few weeks is that in other parts of Devon, older people who have care needs can have a carer or a companion on their bus pass. However, that's not the case in Torbay, and so you have the slightly ridiculous situation of someone who mentioned to me that they can travel from Newton Abbot to Torquay on the bus with their carer, but when they do the return journey, their carer has to pay. And unfortunately, the MyBay card, and whilst it's a very good scheme for carers, unfortunately that perpetuates it slightly because that gives a discount for people who have cars, but it doesn't give a similar discount for people who are on the bus. And that obviously makes things worse for people who are on lower incomes. So in the future, it would be good to see if we can go back to the day when older people have care needs, and indeed perhaps younger people as well, can have a carer or companion on their bus pass. Thank you.
Okay, so I've got two councillors now actually wanting to answer your question. We'll start with Councillor Tranter.
My answer might not be as technical as Councillor Billings, but at a recent Learning Disability Ambassadors meeting, well, they've been raising for a while the fact that their carers or support worker can't get on the bus with them for free, and they're paying out of their benefit money for you know, it's all extra support. We absolutely know that this is something that Devon do. We're looking into it. We've actually got officers looking into it at the minute of how we can make this work. And I think they're going to do some trials. They're just putting that together of whether it will be for everything, whether it will be for medical appointments, how it's going to work and how we can make it work financially. So it's absolutely being looked into at the moment.
Thank you very much. Councillor Long, you're going to get two for the price of one here. Councillor Billings.
I was just going to add, Chairman, that the extent to the detail approach that this particular topic's being looked at, and the fact there's two of us racing to answer the councillor should give reassurance of how important this administration takes this matter. Councillor Long, I spoke earlier about wanting to come to speak to you and other group leaders in relation to improvements on buses in terms of deploying the 2.2 million. Touching on this is one of the topics I'll be coming to talk to you about. It's not just whether carers can take their companion with them to assist them, but it's also the times of the day that they might be able to use travel, whether it's sort of including within peak hours and other things like that. There are all sorts of things that I'll be coming to talk to you and other group leaders about. So lots of good news there, I hope, Mr. Chairman.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. So, the recommendation has been proposed and seconded. Just left to go to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Move on to item 15, which is Adopt South West, the annual report 23 to 24. Councillor Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the recommendation this evening is that Cabinet note and endorse the contents of the Adopt South West Annual Report 2023-2024 as set out in Appendix 1 to the submitted report. This has already been to the Corporate Parenting Board, and then it went to overview and scrutiny just a few weeks ago, who studied it and believe are happy with this report. It is a very positive report. First, I would think the most important thing is that it highlights is that Cornwall has joined Adopt South West. So the original partners, Torbay, with Devon, Plymouth and Somerset, we now have Cornwall on board. So this is the first year that Cornwall has been a part of Adopt South West, and they have actually brought in more potential adoptors. So it's been a good news story. In terms of Torbay, I think I'm very pleased to highlight the timeliness of the average time in days between the local council authority receiving court authority to place and deciding on a match. The lower is the better. For 23-24, this was 135. So that's our A2 indicator, and this is much improved from the previous year when it was 247 days. So Torbay doing well within Adopt South West. Overall, there was 109 children placed in the 23-24 year. 91.3% were placed with adopters approved by Adopt South West. We have in 2023-24 also a good news story on continued increase of children placed in early permanence placements. 42.4% of children that we placed for adoption started their placement under early permanence regulations compared to 36.15 in 22-23. This represents one of the highest rates in the country. Unfortunately, the recruitment of adopters fell by 19%, mirroring a falling number of applicants across England. So that, in fact, also reflects issues in terms of recruiting potential foster carers. So more to be done in terms of recruitment and marketing activity. Adopt Southwest experienced 5 post-adoption order breakdowns in 23-24, but none of them in Torbay. The children were aged between 12 and 16, so the breakdowns were generally of older children who had been adopted. We had a regional adoption agency scrutiny meeting this morning, because this report is for 23-24 up to March 24. We're almost now in March 25. So I actually attended the regional scrutiny meeting this morning. Councillor Yvonne Twelves was also there. Becky Thompson on my right, very much involved with this organisation. And the good work continues. I want people to understand that the good work continues. So there should be another very positive report in 12 months' time. So this slightly historic report. Budget, looking at the budget, there was, I believe, a modest underspend. And in fact, Cornwall coming in decreases slightly our budget contribution share to Adopt Southwest. So not only does it open up the pool of potential adopters, it actually reduces our financial contribution. So positive report. Corporate Parenting Board were happy with it. Overview and Scrutiny were happy with it. I very much hope that colleagues this evening will support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Second, Councillor Jackie Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'm very happy to second the Adopt Southwest Annual Report 2023 to 2024. So thank you to Councillor Bye for your proposal and comprehensive insight as to the detail of what this report contains. As a corporate parent, it is vitally important that this data is undertaken for our adoption functions so we can do our very best for our adopted and cared for children. So very happy to second, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And as Councillor Bye indicated, the Children and Young People's Overview and Scrutiny Sub-Board considered the annual report on the 27th of January and supported the recommendation as it stands to Cabinet, which is fantastic. I would really recommend reading this for any member who hasn't read it. It is littered with links, videos, articles, newspaper stories, and it's a superb document that sends you. Make sure you're connected to the internet. And don't try printing it off and reading it, because the links, you just get totally lost. You think, where am I now? But actually, view it on screen, press the buttons, go and see some of the links, see the videos. It was well worth a read. Well done, well done. So, before we move to the vote on this, any questions, debate? Councillor Long.
Thank you. I was just wanting to delve into Councillor Bye's comprehensive insight a bit further. Just on the Cornwall joining, which is good news, I was just wondering whether the Arts of Scilly were joining as well. The second bit was, as you know, I can't help delving into the equality impacts. And under the sections for sexual orientation, etc., it was mentioned no differential impact, whereas under the other sections, the majority of them, there did seem to be positive impacts. So I was just wondering what plans there were in place to turn the no differential impact into positive impacts. For example, what support is there for adoptive parents whose adoptive children become from the LGBTQ plus community, for example, to help parents understand things, and particularly for those children who decide that they are from the trans community, particularly in the current climate that we're living in, and what support there might be for those parents and those children. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? In which case, I'll move back to Councillor Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm more than happy to go back to Councillor Long when I have further detail in response to the second point that he makes. I mean, the whole point of a report like this going Corporate Parenting Board, but then to overview and scrutiny, is that, you know, that those sorts of things can be raised, I would have thought, at overview and scrutiny. I would very much hope that when I speak with professional colleagues, they will confirm with me that appropriate support absolutely is there, as we would all wish. Cornwall joined in 2024, and there will be a service level agreement in place for the provision of adoption services to the Isles of Scilly. So I know it was given to me to read out, which I didn't, as we've had such a long evening this evening, I didn't read right the way through all the items that were put in front of me, but there is a provision of an adoption services to the Isles of Scilly. I think at a meeting that I have attended, I don't think that there are any children up for adoption in the Isles of Scilly. There are none, but there we go.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. Another comprehensive answer. If we can move then straight to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Move on to our final item this evening, item 16, and it's review of the membership of the Community Infrastructure Levy, the SIL Spend Panel. Thank you, Councillor Lewis.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman, and hopefully I'll be brief on this and get cross-party support. The SIL panel first met in October 23 and have been meeting bi-monthly as required to approve applications submitted for the community infrastructure levy funding from the neighbourhood proportion of the SIL money collected. The SIL panel has approved 13 applications since the panel was established, and this was discussed many months ago that it should be cross-party because it wasn't initially. And I think it is important that we get the input of our good colleagues, the Lib Dems and the Independents. So I do propose the recommendation, and it is long overdue, I must say, and I don't know why it's taken this long, but it has taken this long. As you know, we are open, transparent and determined to work with our colleagues, so this closes that loophole. So the recommendation is that the membership of the Community Infrastructure Levy Spend Panel, SIL, be expanded to include one representative from the Liberal Democrat group and one representative from the Independent group, and that will make the panel cross-party. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Do we have a seconder, please?
Yes, we do, Mr. Chairman. I'm delighted to second this. I mentioned it earlier. The important thing as councillors is we're all here to deliver for our residents, and as much collaborative working as there can be is the best way to achieve that. And therefore, it's great that we can include colleagues from other political parties in this committee, and I look forward to constructive cross-party working. And yes, it is a bit overdue, and we should have done this much earlier. It should have been done in previous councils, but it's great that we've now done this, and I look forward to working with colleagues all across the chamber in the interests of our residents. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Any comments on this one? Councillor Timon.
Yes, I thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been one of the members on the panel up to now, and I welcome this, and I think it will be particularly helpful because although I don't believe it has had any detrimental impact on the decisions that have been taken by those of us, The fact is that we haven't had anybody on that panel that represent a ward in Torquay. They've all been at the middle to southern part of the bay, and I think that, and I hope that this will create that balance better as well. I don't think the where we've been has been quite a loophole, because I think we've given very good interrogation to schemes wherever in the bay they've come from, and have been able to deal with them well, but it just feels more comfortable to be better representative, both geographically and politically, in making these considerations. So I'm fully in support.
Thank you very much indeed. Any further comments? In which case we shall move to the vote. All those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. My apologies. Thank you very much indeed. And at 19:25, the meeting is closed. Thank you very much indeed.